It is the 42nd founding day of the Bharatiya Janata Party. And by the way, the color of my kurta is purely coincidental. It has nothing to do with any prior planning. Because until a couple of hours back, I didn't even know what I was talking about. So I was mulling something over Pakistan, something over Ukraine. And then it suddenly occurred to me that we should talk about the BJP, because without understanding where it came from, what setbacks and highs it has had its way, what has contributed to its remarkable success, we cannot understand what might happen in national politics going ahead in the future. Because you know what? Say the first 50 years or so after independence, Indian politics was run around, it was constructed around the Congress party as its central pillar. So there was a Congress party and all the rest, some were with it, many were against it, those against it combined. But the basic political argument in the country was set by the Congress party. That has now changed. That epoch is over. This is the BJP's epoch. At least for 30 years, if not more, beginning 2014, or I'd say 2012-13, it looks like India's politics will now be constructed around the BJP. So there'll be BJP and then there will be the rest. So the Congress epoch has yielded to the BJP epoch. But then you might then ask me, particularly the millennials may ask me that, look, BJP looks like it's a very old party, but how come you are saying it's only the 42nd founding day of the BJP? Now, thereby lies a story. BJP started, the original party started on 21st October 1951 in Delhi as Bharatiya Jan Sangh. What had happened during the freedom movement and during the days leading up to the independence and the passing of the new constitution, that a lot of the Hindu right parties or Hindu right groups, they were not quite political as yet. So at one point of time, because Hindu Mahasabha was, to the extent that it was political and to the extent that it got some success, it was in politics. But RSS stayed out of politics. And RSS said that, look, there should be a parting of ways. RSS, Hindu Mahasabha are different organizations. We have similar beliefs, but Hindu Mahasabha is in politics. We are not in politics. So obviously, at some point of time, RSS decided it was time for them also to produce, spawn, birth a political party. That political party was Bharatiya Jan Sangh. So the first president, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, was somebody who left Hindu Mahasabha to help the RSS found Bharatiya Jan Sangh. So that party came into being then. Its election symbol was a lamp or a diya, normal earthen lamp of the kind that we light on Diwalis. That was the election symbol. That continued on till 1977. Then what happened in 1977? That party, by the way, had never got great success at a national level. 1967, it got 35 or 37, I think 35 seats in national elections, and that was its high. And then a notion grew that you could create an opposition unity against Mrs. Gandhi, against Indira Gandhi. And from then on, for the next decade, the party, the Bharatiya Jan Sangh, the original party, it tried joining many coalitions against Mrs. Gandhi, but was not able to unseat her from power. Between 1975 and 77, during the emergency, when Mrs. Gandhi locked up all her opposition in jails, and these opposition leaders had a lot of time to spend with each other and understand each other, plus they by now were that much more determined to get Mrs. Gandhi out. So as they came out and Mrs. Gandhi announced elections, they got together. So four parties, including Bharatiya Jan Sangh, they got together. Bharatiya Jan Sangh, Congress, that is Organization Congress, what used to be the Bharatiya Kranti Dal that Charan Singh had founded, and also the socialists, they came together to set up Janata Party, the ill-fated Janata Party. They came to power under Morarji Desai, but lasted only 2.5 years. Now, why did that government fall? One of the major fault lines in that government, there were many other issues. And there are also impressions, and I don't think they're all wrong, of some foreign interference at that time, because this was not seen to be a government that was probably as friendly to the Soviets, or at least the Soviets did not see this government as being as friendly to them as they would have wanted it to be. Remember, it was Morarji Desai as Janata Party's Prime Minister who broke the ice with the Americans after the Nixon-Kissinger freeze, and he met Jimmy Carter. In Washington, he also invited Jimmy Carter to India and he came to India. So this was seen to be a government which was more open to the American side. And this was the peak of the Cold War. So we don't exactly know what happened. We'll need more historical research on that period. But if you ask me, I still believe that many of those things are alibis. The central fault line in that party was ideological. And that ideological line came from the fact that a core of the party, very powerful core of the party, led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, that came in from Bharatiya Janasangh, and while they joined the new party, while Bharatiya Janasangh ceased to exist and merged in the new Janata party in the country, they were not willing to give up their RSS membership. And soon enough, elements of the left, particularly socialists in the Janata party, they began raising questions. And then the issue became dual membership, that those who are members of Janata party cannot be members of another ideological organization. It was ideologically on that issue that the party split. The party split. Mrs. Gandhi swept the 1980 elections. She came back to power within less than 2.5 years. It was a short-lived experiment. In 1980 elections, Bharatiya Janasangh was still in the merged entity of Janata Party. That Janata Party just got 30 odd seats in that election. It was a very dismal election for that party. That Janata Party, which included Bharatiya Janasangh or those elements, got just 31 seats in 1980. So they had done very badly. The splinter group, Janata Party under Charan Singh, which had the elements of the earlier Bharatiya Kranti Dal, etc., many of which later became Lok Dal, and so on and so forth, they got 41 seats. So this was, in a way, the end of Bharatiya Janasangh. At this point, leaders of the Bharatiya Janasangh, essentially Atal Bihari Vajpayee and L.K. Advani, they had been there. They were also in the Morarji cabinet. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was External Affairs Minister. L.K. Advani was Information and Broadcasting Minister. They were much younger people then. So they came out and all of them decided that it was time to revive a party of the Hindu right, a party of the Hindu right where nobody will be questioned about dual membership. So RSS was your home, RSS was your guru, it was your teacher, and you could be in a party and not be questioned for it because they were not willing to give up that RSS affiliation. And we'll come back to this in terms of how much does that matter and what role that plays in BJP's coherence and success in a minute. Now, so it was on 6th of April 1980 that they decided to found a new party which was a mirror image of the old party. So Bharatiya Janasangh was now reborn as Bharatiya Janata Party. And now I will tell you a little story about this. When I was recording my first episode of Walk the Talk with Mr. L.K. Advani, when he was Deputy Prime Minister and Home Minister of India outside North Block on a Sunday. So it was a Sunday on the Easter weekend. He reminded me and he said that, look, this is the Easter weekend. In 1980, 6th April was the Sunday of the Easter weekend. And that's when Bharatiya Janasangh was born. And I said, just like Christ, we died on Friday and we are now reborn on Sunday. So the same party was reborn, but under a different name. Mr. Advani may have been saying this also because he had gone to a convent school in Karachi. So on Easter Sunday, on the day of rebirth of Jesus Christ in 1980, Bharatiya Janasangh was reborn at BJP. Now see what's happened to the party since then. If you look at the party's parliamentary performance, it's very interesting. And you will see it in the graphic on my screen also. It's a very simple graphic. 1980, 31 is all of Janata Party, including Janasangh. So you might say, I haven't gone into the micro details of sort of cutting and splicing to see how many of them were former BJS people, but maybe 15, 16, 17. 1984, they were down to 2 MPs, right? That is when Rajiv Gandhi famously said that for the opposition, we have declared 10 plus 2 plus 3 formula. Of that, 2 was the BJP. So the BJP was in that bad a state. So formed just 4 years earlier, its first election contest as a party, as a coherent party, it just got 2 seats in the whole country. Usually, a party would not have recovered from that, but BJP recovered, and I will come to the 5 reasons why I think the party has done so well and has continued to grow and taken these setbacks in its stride. 1989, 85. From 2, it went up to 85. I will also then give you a list of BJP's presidents. And you will also see how the respective presidencies have coincided with the party's electoral performance. And we are only looking at Lok Sabha right now. 1984 to 1989, 85. Rajiv Gandhi, who got nearly 415 seats in 1984, now lost his majority, lost power. Congress party has never got power back after that. And from 2, BJP came to 85. There is serious politics behind what they did with that 85, and I will come to that. After 85, in 1991, it was 120. They were going higher and higher. So 2, 85, 120, 161 in 1996, 182 in 1998, and the same number, 182 in 1999. Now you might ask me, how come so many elections? That's because in 1996, BJP were able to put together a coalition, but it failed to get the vote of confidence. It fell within 13 days. Then the Devagowda, Gujarat governments came for some time, and then there was a fresh election and BJP came into power. And within a year, in the summer of 1999, that government also fell because they lost the vote of confidence by 1 vote. And it was a very tough time for India because that's when the war in Kargil was breaking out. So in fact, the election commission decided to delay a fresh election until the war was sorted out. Once that was over, then that election again took place in 1999. So BJP repeated its number of 182. Then it comes down in 2004 to 138. And then at its lowest number post 1996, that is 116 in 2009. And we know what happened after that, 2014 and 2019. I need not repeat that. Now, see what's happened with the BJP's politics meanwhile. In 1980, they realized that they were looking like an old people's party and they wanted to produce something new for the people. So in fact, see this interview that I had with Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee at that point. I had done a cover story in India Today on India's sort of punch-drunk opposition because I was a very junior young reporter. If you get to cover politics, what do you get to cover except a defeated opposition, right? The big guys get the ruling party and the winners and the Gandhi family and all that. So I did go to meet Mr. Vajpayee and he said that, look, I understand that we suffered because we don't have youthful leaders. And he named then, and this is 1985 January when we are speaking, he named then people like he said, Arun Jaitley, Pramod Mahajan, and we have to look for more people. So BJP has been always good at spotting young talent and building them up. And that will be one of my 5 reasons why the BJP has done so well. Now, 1984, they did so badly. By 1989, by this time they knew that they had to bring in some more ideological twist to what was going on. So 1985, Rajiv Gandhi made his big mistake over the Shah Bano case. I need not repeat it all, in trying to overcorrect them because he thought that this had angered his Hindu voters into thinking that he was appeasing the Muslims. He then tried to appease the Hindus by unlocking the temple mosque site in Ayodhya, by allowing Shilanyas, that is the foundation stone laying, and also by launching his 1989 election campaign from Ayodhya with the promise of Ram Rajya. That's precisely what the BJP wanted. And Mr. Advani was by now the president. Mr. Vajpayee was president 1980 to 1986. 85, the Shah Bano Tamasha happens. And now Mr. Advani takes over and then he focuses on Ayodhya and then comes the Rath Yatra, etc. Now in 1989, BJP got only 85 seats. The party to which VP Singh belonged, they got about 160. Now, nobody was in a position to form a government. Congress itself was way short of majority. But if they wanted, they could have put something together. But Rajiv Gandhi said at that point that the verdict is against us. We've lost the mandate. Let other guys form a government. He might have thought that this will be one more khichdi that will fall in a couple of years, just as the Janata party had done in the past, and we will come back. Now, that is when a government was set up under VP Singh. And BJP swallowed its pride because BJP then demonstrated to us what real politics means, what pragmatism means. They decided to support VP Singh's government from outside. VP Singh's coalition was a very strange animal because it survived in power with BJP supporting it on the right and the left parties, obviously, on the left, both from outside. That government didn't last very long, but the fact is that the BJP had already proven to the electorate that they were a serious proposition. Plus, you get some benefits of that proximity to power because, if anything, you also become kingmakers in that government. Then came the 91 election. That's when Rajiv Gandhi had thought that this Khichdi will collapse, and Khichdi did collapse, and I will come back. Midway through that election, Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated. So fate took another turn. In that election, the BJP got 120. The Congress party was short of majority, but not by that much. And Narasimha Rao became Prime Minister. And that was the period when a non-Gandhi became the president of the Congress party. Sonia was outside politics. And Narasimha Rao became president for about 5 years, followed by another 2.5 to 3 years of Sitaram Kesri. In the 42 years since 1980, this is the only period when Congress party had a non-Gandhi as its president. And therein lies a story which I will come to in just a minute. And then, as I told you, 1998, by this time there was ideological coherence, but also BJP has softened in some areas. For example, Article 370, for example, Uniform Civil Code, their favorite issues. And they said, we'll deal with these when we have a majority. And there were many people who thought they will never get a majority. I was one of those. So in fact, at a conference in Hong Kong, to a questioner who asked me, so what happens when BJP comes to power with a majority? I said, it will never happen, because my political analysis at that point told me that there is no way BJP can have such a wide acceptability. And God knows that I was made to eat my words. In fact, the gentleman who asked that question is somebody who you can find on Twitter. He's very prolific on Twitter, makes a lot of sense, very often disagrees with me, but he did remind me that I had said this wrong, and he made me eat my words. 1996, BJP had got 161, and they were still denied power because they could not last more than 13 days. They lost that vote of confidence, and they figured that there was a problem. There were too many people in Indian politics, or too many parties, that found it impossible to associate with the BJP. So then time came for them to smoothen some of those edges. And that's when they said, these are our ideological principles. We will wait for a majority to implement them, which they began doing as soon as they got a majority. Now, softening that whole Hindutva thing at that point allowed the BJP to build a stronger NDA, to attract more parties. So remember, there was a time when Mamata Banerjee, Naveen Patnaik, Chandrababu Naidu, they had all joined NDA. And that's how NDA grew. At the core of NDA was the BJP. 1998, 182, they got power. 1999, in a fresh election, they got power again. The NDA now had more numbers than before, not that many more, but some more. 2004, they lost power in that election, that they lost narrowly on points, because Congress party had got just a few more seats than them. And once again, more parties found it convenient to join hands with the Congress party in a UPA than with the BJP in an NDA. And that's when the left got a lot of seats, and they supported that coalition from outside. Then the lowest level that the BJP hit since 1991 was 2009, when they got 116 seats, and UPA came back to power with a larger majority. Now see, meanwhile, what's happening to BJP's leadership, top leadership. So 1980 to 86, Atal Bihari Vajpayee is the president. 86 to 91, L.K. Advani, so double term. 91 to 93, Murli Manohar Joshi. 93 to 98, L.K. Advani again. You will see the pictures on the screen. 98 to 2000, Kushabhai Thackeray. Very interesting. Who was Kushabhai Thackeray? He is the least known of BJP's presidents. Kushabhai Thackeray was not even an active BJP politician. He had been borrowed from the RSS to head the BJP. Now, possibly, at least my analysis is, or the analysis that I believe in, which wiser people have given to me, is that Kushabhai Thackeray was drafted in that job to reassure the RSS that their principles were not being given up, but the BJP, to consolidate itself in power, had to widen its appeal to those who until now had found the BJP unacceptable because of the RSS ideology. So it was under Kushabhai Thackeray for 2 years that the party also relaxed in many of these areas, loosened in many of these areas, so the coalition became stronger. Again, 2001, 2002, an unknown Jana Krishnamurthy, he had a short term because he became a cabinet minister, and BJP follows the one man, one post principle. Now, you might ask me that if Jana Krishnamurthy was the president from 2001 to 2002 and Kushabhai Thackeray between 98 to 2000, what happened to that 1 year between 2000 and 2001? That 1 year is when BJP had its most forgotten president. That is Bangaru Lakshman. Bangaru Lakshman was caught in that Tehelka expose, taking a bribe. He was made to resign. He was prosecuted, didn't live very long after that, died and has been completely forgotten. His name has been completely erased from the BJP's history. He, by the way, was a Dalit from Andhra Pradesh, the only Dalit to have risen to the party president level in the BJP. It was also part of the BJP's effort to reach out to the South, because they knew that unless they grow a footprint, a larger footprint in the South, they will not be able to rule India. They will not be able to get power on their own. So once again, because Bangaru Lakshman had to be removed, he was immediately replaced by someone else from the South, that is Jana Krishnamurthy from Tamil Nadu. Yet again, as Jana Krishnamurthy became a minister and gave up presidency, he was replaced by another leader from the South. From Andhra this time, Venkaiah Naidu, who you know well, he's now your vice president. 2004 elections, the BJP lost narrowly, but it lost power. Venkaiah Naidu took moral responsibility and resigned. So that is the other thing about the BJP. There is accountability there is reward for success, but there is accountability for failures also. So Venkaiah Naidu resigned, taking responsibility for that defeat. 2004-05, Advani was back. But what happened to Advani? Why did he have such a short tenure? And thereby lies a lesson. Because he went to Karachi and he made that statement about Jinnah having started out as a secular leader. That the BJP and RSS would never accept. So the story is that whatever happens, the BJP and RSS will never accept an ideological compromise, will never accept a compromise on their core beliefs. You may agree with them, you may not agree with them. So after Advani made that statement, his position became untenable. He had to leave the presidency, and then came Rajnath Singh for his first presidency. Advani was in his third presidency now. Meanwhile, 91 to 93, Murli Manohar Joshi had his innings, long innings. Advani had been back for 5 years between 93-98. That is when the party rose to power. But now, this time Advani, in spite of those successes, he could not last after that statement on Jinnah, and he lost the presidency, and since then has never really been rehabilitated fully in the BJP, although he continued to see himself as the prime ministerial candidate until 2009. Now, 2005 to 9, Rajnath Singh, again quite young at that point. He's not yet 70, right? So he was still in his early 50s. He became president. 2009, BJP again lost elections, and Rajnath Singh also resigned, taking moral responsibility. 2009 to 13, again a long innings, Nitin Gadkari became the youngest president in the BJP's history. He had an extended tenure of 4 years and could have lasted a second full tenure, but for a scandal breaking out where allegations were made against him. Later he was cleared of those, but he had to leave because of that. And once again, Rajnath Singh was brought back as the party president. After that, we know what happened. After that, Amit Shah, who had 2 innings, and then now Mr. JP Nadda. What are the takeaways here? Look at the presidents of the BJP. So with multiple terms, discounting the multiple terms, in 42 years, BJP has had 11 presidents. One of them we forget, that is Bangaru Lakshman, who went out in disgrace and died shortly afterwards. Shortly means a few years afterwards, but he completely got forgotten. That leaves out 10. See out of these what happened. Once again, Kushabhai Thackeray was borrowed from the RSS, sort of returned to the RSS. Jana Krishnamurthy was again a lightweight from Tamil Nadu. He was brought in to give the South a place, and then he disappeared. But look at all the others. Of the remaining 8 presidents, Atal Bihari Vajpayee became Prime Minister. So one became Prime Minister. Advani became Home Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. Murli Manohar Joshi, a senior member of the cabinet of the Vajpayee cabinet. Venkaiah Naidu, today Vice President of India. Rajnath Singh, Home Minister and now Defense Minister of India. Nitin Gadkari, among the most visible cabinet ministers in two Modi cabinets. Amit Shah, I need not remind you of the job he has, of the position he has. And then JP Nadda, who's now the president. He's been a minister in the past, cabinet minister. He's now the president. He's still quite young by Indian political standards. So you can see that he will have a future in the party on the upside. Now, this tells us what works with the BJP. So I will list these 5 factors quickly. Number 1, there is ideological cohesion and an ideological mentor. I'm combining this into one. So ideological mentor is the RSS. Ideological cohesion means everybody believes in the same ideology. So even people that the BJP is now importing from outside now, from the RSS, outside of the RSS, like say Himanta Biswa Sarma, who came from the Congress, was never in the RSS. He speaks the RSS language even more than the RSS would. This is very different from what it might have been in the past. When people like Yashwant Sinha, Jaswant Singh, they were able to strike a slightly different political path, ideological path of their own, now ideological purity. So if anything, ideological purity and cohesion in the BJP has strengthened over these 42 years instead of weakening. Number 2, because of this cohesion, the party has had very few defections. In fact, if you start counting, you will find very few. And I did apply my mind to it. I also went to chat with DK Singh, our political editor, to ask him. And we figured that 3 or 4 senior leaders in recent past have left the BJP. And these are people that all of us are familiar with. Yediyurappa, Uma Bharti, Kalyan Singh and Shankar Singh Waghela. Of the 4, 3 have come back to the BJP. They formed their own parties. That is Yediyurappa, Uma Bharti, Kalyan Singh. They all formed their own parties but came back to the BJP. Only one has stayed out. So I consider him the only defector of consequence because he became Chief Minister of Gujarat. He, by the way, although he was there with Congress support, he, by the way, was the last Congress-supported Chief Minister in Gujarat. Since then, the BJP has had that position. And he was Chief Minister of Gujarat a long time back, I think 96, 97. Once again, if you go backwards, if you go to the era of the Jan Sangh, there were no defections, but there were some disaffection. So Balraj Madhok, who was the president of the party for 3 years, including in 1967, when party got its highest numbers in parliament yet, and he tried to set up some kind of a coalition with other parties of the right, particularly Swatantra Party at that point, which has disappeared. Its election symbol used to be a star. He failed in that effort because people like Vajpayee opposed him. People like Vajpayee and Advani said that he was going away from ideological purity. He said, on the other hand, that people like Advani, Vajpayee, imagine, this is what the debate was, he thought they were too influenced by the left because Balraj Madhok was much more a man of the right, even on the economy and foreign policy. So when Advani became president of the Bharatiya Janasangh, by the way, both Advani and Vajpayee had been presidents of Bharatiya Janasangh as well. When Advani became president in 1973, he expelled Balraj Madhok. Around that time, also Manohar Lal Sondhi, who was a former Indian Foreign Service officer, a distinguished intellectual who had joined Janasangh, who had got elected to parliament, he also left Bharatiya Janasangh on similar sort of grievances. At some point of time, Balraj Madhok even tried to form a party, but it did not go anywhere. Later also, we saw someone like Govindacharya got disaffected, but did not defect. So that is the difference. BJP has had a very small number of defectors, and that comes mainly because of ideological cohesion. The brotherhood holds ideological cohesion and the presence of a mentor guru. Number 3 is accountability. I told you that when you are successful, you are rewarded, but when you fail, you pay for it. That's how we saw Venkaiah Naidu give up presidency in 2004 and also Rajnath Singh give up presidency in 2009. Fourth, while you might see some elements of dynasty politics coming in now, it's very little. Now you might say, oh, that's because the party has come into power only lately. So dynasties might develop and will develop in the course of time. And the fact is the party has imported many dynasts from the Congress party and other parties. But so far, it's been a meritocracy and people have risen from within. And that is the reason the party has this endless supply of young leaders. See, Pramod Sawant, the Chief Minister of Goa. See Pushkar Dhami, the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand. These are new people and these are young people. Nobody knew about them. Himanta Biswa Sarma, okay, they imported him from Congress party, but a new young leader. Look at Rajasthan. They have Vasundhara Raje, but they also have Om Birla, who's the Speaker of Lok Sabha. They have Bhupendra Yadav, who's a senior, powerful minister and has done a lot of work for the organization and the party. Young man. Similarly, they have their party chief there, which is Satish Punia. So they have this talent assembly line. They have a lot of these committed young people available and competing among themselves. And how does this meritocracy come in? It comes in mainly because the party has a good HR policy. So go back to that Vajpayee interview in January 1985. When he said, we need young talent, we have to build young people. And he then mentioned Arun Jaitley and Pramod Mahajan. And we know where they reached. They most likely would have reached way beyond this also if the fate had not, unfortunately, taken them away so early. So if you're competing, whether you're a fan of the BJP or you are competing with the BJP, you need to understand where did the party come from? How did it become so strong? How has it become stronger and stronger? How it's been able to take its big setbacks down to 2 in Lok Sabha in its first election, in its stride, and rise from that school of hard knocks which Indian politics is. Because without understanding that, even if you're an opponent of the BJP, you cannot fight the BJP.